Mr. Alejo, AB 215, file item number 1. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today I'm presenting AB 215, which reduces the amount of school district superintendent may receive for severance pay to no more than 12 times their monthly salary and a 6-month for a cause. Currently, superintendents receive a severance pay for up to 18 times their monthly salary. The cost of paying a superintendent severance places a heavy burden on schools that struggle to operate during the academic year, a burden that they can no longer be carrying. Addressing the need to minimize the superintendent's severance is an issue that affects not only my district, but districts throughout the state. For example, in 2005, the superintendent of San Jose's East Side Union High School District received a $337,000 severance. In 2008, the superintendent of Los Angeles Unified received a $517,500 severance. And there's about 150,000 superintendents out of 600 school districts earn more in their annual salaries than our current governor, Jerry Brown. 71% of superintendents in the state's largest districts and 45% of all superintendents left their jobs between 2006 and 2009. The combination of paying high salaries and high superintendent turnover is a cost that has become unbearable for many of our schools. Fiscal discipline and the administration of taxpayer dollars, as well as redirecting our attention to the needs of our students by saving money, will assist schools facing excessive severance packages. AB 215 lays the foundation for schools to improve their administrative processes and financial investments, and the implementation of this bill will make better use of funds allotted to K-12 education, along with investing more in our future of our students' education. Therefore, I respectfully request and urge an aye vote on this bill. And I just wanted to state for the record, this has been language that amendments that we made to this bill were language that we worked in consultation with AXA. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. Others in support? Seeing no others in support, any opposition, if you could come forward.
Laura Preston, Association of California School Administrators. I would like to defer my time, and if possible, to give the 4 minutes for one witness that's here in opposition. Would that be okay?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Larry Aceves. I am a retired superintendent. I served as superintendent in San Jose for 15 years, and after that served 8 years as a headhunter doing superintendent searches throughout the state of California to hire superintendents for schools, and personally saw 32 searches that we had conducted. Leadership Associates was a firm I was a partner in, bring successful superintendents to district. School superintendents, city managers, and county administrators are all treated the same under the government code. They are hired and fired by locally elected governing boards as at-will employees. Interestingly, AB 215 only applies to superintendents. We have gone from a period as a superintendent where there were no limits to a buyout, down to 24 months to a buyout, down to 18 months for a buyout. And this is the limit. School boards and superintendents can make other adjustments. Not all superintendents currently have 18-month limits. Some of them have less. That's a decision made locally by the elected board and the superintendent. Certainly there have been some high-profile cases, and we certainly understand that. That happens all the time. It certainly happens in the legislature. You know, legislators get in trouble and things happen. I want to mention to you, obviously, that superintendents are responsible for multi-million-dollar budgets. Oftentimes they're the largest employer in the district or in the community. Strong leaders are critical in overseeing the whole district, the transportation, curriculum, food service, bond expenditures, and mistakes can often cause millions of dollars in lawsuits. I bring this up because for hard-to-fill districts, and there are many, where it's a tough district to run, there's some toxicity amongst the elected board members, and I've seen several candidates who would not step forward, very highly qualified candidates that would be really a great benefit to the district in high-need districts. I was in San Jose for 15 years, and my district was one with high, limited English speakers, high poverty, and those districts sometimes take people who are willing to take a risk. So when I was out recruiting, when we had this type of district we were recruiting for, oftentimes what would happen would be that if it was a quality sitting superintendent, they were smart enough to read the papers. They were smart enough to understand, look, this district's gone through 2 or 3 superintendents in the last few years. Why would I go there? I think the unintended consequences of AB 215 are that you will have a harder time filling the very districts that the assembly member is looking to fill. If I'm sitting in a pretty good job, why would I listen to Larry Aceves to come to a district that might need my skills if I have to move my family and possibly relocate myself and possibly have a career-ending episode in a district that is unstable? I've seen the numbers drop. At one time, there were as many as 60 to 70 candidates who would put in their names for superintendencies. We have some searches now where we're lucky if we can get 7, particularly for that reason. People are not as willing to step up. And my fear is that, particularly for the most difficult districts, to have a law that basically truncates their buyout. I mean, really a buyout is caused by a board who comes in and decides after the superintendent's been hired, we're getting rid of you. Many superintendents, and I'm going to tell you that over a period of years, the number of buyouts is much, much smaller than the superintendents who have left their positions. Most superintendents either move on to another district or agree to leave without a buyout. I think this creates a problem rather than creating a solution. So I'm opposed to this. I think it's going to create some, as I said, unintended consequences for the hardest to serve districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aceves. Any others in opposition?
Carlos Machado with California School Boards Association. We
Just be quick.
opposed.
Thank you. Okay. That was very quick. Thank you.
That's right.
With that, Mr. Alejo, I just want to clarify, AXA is opposed. Okay, because my understanding was something a little different. Something had been worked out. Am I incorrect?
Well, we had a very good meeting with the assembly member, and the bill has been amended, but it still does not address our concerns.
Yeah, we reached out to AXA from the very beginning, and these amendments that are in the bill now were amendments we worked directly with AXA. AXA signaled to us they could live with the bill if we made those amendments from switching for no cause, switching it from 18 to 12 months. That's why we think this is a balanced approach. It switches from 18 to 12, but when there is cause, that means they did some violation of their contract. It goes down from 12 to 6, and then when there's some kind of criminal or some fraud or some egregious issues, it's dropped from 6 to 3 months. So this was something we worked out together. I thought we had an understanding, sides that had concerns, but this was something that they said they could live with this bill with these amendments, and that's why we included them.
Okay. I sense they're not living now. Yeah, I'm just right.
Well,
So-
I apologize if there was a misunderstanding. I thought the one issue that is, there's a couple of things actually in the bill. One, we would like to remove the 3-month piece for somebody who's done something illegal. We don't want to pay them a dime. So that should be stricken from the bill. But also, we have a serious concern, and I've communicated with Assemblymember Alejo's staff. It's that we're singling out school superintendents in the government code that is treating all individuals who report to a locally elected governing body, whether it's a city, whether it's a county, whether it's a school district, and now we're taking out a superintendent and treating them differently. That's a real concern for us. I think there's a conversation to be had whether it should be up to 18 months and up to 12 months. That's one conversation, but it should be addressed with everybody that the law was originally intended for it to deal with.
Okay, and a couple other questions. I mean, listen, I have a lot of times in this committee we deal with people who want to get the teacher. And my concern is now we want to get the superintendent. I don't want to get anybody. I want everybody to be successful. So what does dismiss for cause mean? Can you give me the AXA interpretation of cause? Because could cause be for, certainly would be some immoral or egregious act.
Egregious types of actions, that's correct.
And in the Ed Code, it lists a number of what cause looks like. And also that can be negotiated as well. I mean, when a board is hiring a superintendent, they can outline what definitions they want to use in the definition of a cause. I've heard all sorts of things. So that can be negotiated at the local level.
I guess my concern, again, is the unintended consequences and the ability of some smaller districts, you know, in southeast LA County, where sometimes the boards are going at it, and you see superintendents leave real quick, and that doesn't serve the children of all. That's my concern, Mr. Alejo.
But, Mr. Chairman, that's why we left a reasonable amount in there. There's still a 12 months severance that is permitted. That's still significant. We're simply seeing these cases, as is outlined in the analysis, where somebody comes in and they go off on leave, but then they're leaving with a $325,000 severance at a time when our schools were making cuts, having to make some tough choices. $325,000 could have probably meant the careers and job opportunities for several teachers, several classified school employees. This question is basically, what is the right amount in these types of cases? And we think we reached the right balance. So that's why we work with AXA on this language, you know, to still have a meaningful amount of severance at 12 months. And that's not, I find it hard, and there's no evidence whatsoever to show that that's going to deter somebody from accepting a superintendent role in any particular school district. There's absolutely no evidence of that.
And you could tell I'm trying to become comfortable with this. I'm just not yet. I mean, why wouldn't this apply to city managers as well?
As many issues, Mr. Chairman, we deal with issues in particular areas where there is demonstrated evidence for need in the change of the law. And that's a bill for another day, but this bill, on many issues, is focused on this particular issue.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee? Mr. McCarty.
Thank you. I support this bill for a few things. One, I'm not adverse to having it for city managers and county CEOs as well, and those salaries are sometimes between $250,000 to $400,000, and as you note, a couple times higher than the governor of California. Right. But one thing, too, I think is important. I hear what you're saying, Mr. Aceves, about families and people moving and so forth, but superintendents, by and large, I'm not an educator, but I would think they were prior teachers, then they became school principals, then they become superintendents, so they're later up in their years. They've accumulated a lot of years probably in the CalSTRS system. So many times, you know, I've seen in my case that people are retirement age as well by the time that they finally leave. And so it's not, you know, a burdensome issue for people earlier in their career. I've seen that firsthand with cities as well. And so I don't think this is that out of the ordinary. You're still giving a year up to 18 months with cause. And so I think this is a reasonable approach. And, you know, I wouldn't be adverse, again, Mr. Lee, if you talked about local government as well. Thank you. Very clear.
Mr. Chavez.
My question goes to the superintendent, past superintendent. Having sat on also on boards, in termination, there's a way, you know, they're at will. Generally in their contract, it says, you know, if a vote of the council or the board decides you to leave, you know, you leave, and there's in the contract they get 12 months or 18 months separation. And that could be anything. They decide they don't like the way his tie looks today, so they can have him go. Now, the word cause is one level, and that could be somebody says in the contract, you know, you didn't do something. But what if it's a case of something that really egregious? Let's say he found in criminal activity. Is that called cause, or is there a different term for that?
I believe that falls under cause. The only thing I was speaking to in my statements, and I've, having been a superintendent for 15 years, understand that sometimes it doesn't work out. There are, unfortunately, members in any profession who ought not to be in the profession. None of us are wanting to protect people who basically commit illegal acts or egregious acts that you know, clearly would be a cause dismissal. I personally am only speaking to the 18 months. I believe that the issue of boards changing, the next election, going from a 3-2 board to a 3-2-3 board, and then suddenly the board majority saying, we don't want you anymore, puts the onus on the superintendent. Obviously, as an at-will employee, you understand that going in. And I would disagree with Assemblyman McCarty that somehow superintendents are now just older people. Although some of us were older people. Many superintendents now, because the openings are coming so rapidly, we're losing 250 superintendents a year to retirement. And boards used to say, give us the most experienced, give us sitting superintendents. And the problem was that they don't exist. And now who's moving up are very inexperienced, younger people who want to make a difference. I just placed one right before I retired in this area who is in his 30s. He's not nearly ready to retire, and he wants to do something for the good of the children in his district. The districts that will suffer most, I promise you, will be the districts that the Assemblyman is most concerned about here. The districts that need someone who understands curriculum, someone who understands how to teach second language learners, someone who can direct people, not just simply someone who blows in and blows out. I'm not interested in protecting those people either. But again, the unintended consequences are that those are the ones you'll lose, the people who will not step up.
And if I may just ask, since you said you're I think you term headhunter or whatever, you hire people.
I retired now.
If it's a young superintendent, let's say 43 years old, probably kids getting ready to finish high school, if they're terminated from their previous employment, when you have a person like that filling out a resume for you to go to another school district, are they seen on an equal footing? Or are they seen in a bad light? Or once you're terminated, you need to go pick another career path?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Oftentimes they're seen as damaged goods because a board will say, why was this person terminated? Well, you can only say so many things. I mean, obviously, the board majority chose not to bring them back. Well, why would we hire someone who was fired? And so they become then very vulnerable. I know of at least 5 who were fired by boards unexpectedly, I would say unfairly, who have not been able to get back into the profession as superintendents. And it's difficult. When you're even in your 30s or 40s, it's difficult to get back when what you wanted to do was help run a district. Obviously, directions change with boards, but when you're fired, somehow there's a label placed on you that there must have been something wrong with you.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the only other comment I'll make, just a comment for the board. There's a big difference between being an elected official and being a city manager or a superintendent. Those are people that are hired by elected members. So elected members, we choose to go into this service and we know what the pay is, and I don't think it's really about the pay. I don't think Governor Brown's counting what his pay is. So I think, but we're elected. We go before the public and ask to serve. But people who run cities and run school boards or run port authorities or, redevelopment districts, they come with unique skills that are determined by elected members. So I think to draw the comparison is not totally correct, and because you can be elected with no education and fill that role. In fact, I think there's somebody running for president doesn't even have a college degree, but you cannot probably be a superintendent or a city manager without a number of degrees and special skills to do that. So I think the comparison isn't appropriate. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Any further comment? Mr. Alejo, you may close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would agree with the comments of my colleague, Kevin McCarty. I think he meant to say more experience, because by the time people come up the ranks, people have served in many different capacities as teachers. They moved out as principals and deputy superintendents. And as in the case of Pajaro Valley in my hometown or in Salinas, the board chose to go with somebody who came up the ranks. And there is those incidents where they're brought from other areas, but many times they're brought up from the ranks, the people who are most experienced experienced, most knowledgeable about the school district. And I would disagree that they're damaged goods when there has been no for cause. Usually it happens very often. Superintendents will be able to find jobs very easily. And usually those severance agreements include confidentiality clauses. But it's different when there is for cause or when there's been some criminal issue or fraud issue. Then those become more public. They're publicized in the newspapers. Those are different types of cases. So it's not clear across the board. But just to give you an example, if there was a superintendent making $300,000 a year, when they leave, they're guaranteed a severance package of $450,000. That would be 18 months, 18 months of pay upon them leaving. I think all we're doing is we would be switching that from instead of 450 to 300. That would be a 12-month example. But certainly the 150,000 would save a school district, especially a small one, a significant amount of money to put it where it should be, which is in the classroom serving our students. And that's why with this approach, it was balanced. I reached out to AXA, again, trying to find the right formula that would still create those incentives to keep superintendents, but also address some of the issues that you've seen play out in some of the articles I distributed to you. But the current law, as Assemblymember Chavez was addressing, the current law, for example, even in cases of fraud, this is paragraph 2 on the first sheet of the analysis, and paragraph 2, in cases of fraud, misappropriation of funds, or other legal fiscal practices, they're still guaranteed 6 times the pay, 6 months' pay. In a case of, and that's why we're dropping it down to 3. As it's enumerated in the analysis here. It's unless the analysis is wrong, this is what I'm saying what current law is. So that's all we're trying to find is the right approach, and I think this bill achieves that, and I'll respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. And let me just ask you a question quickly. You know, I appreciate the intent of your bill, which is to funnel dollars to the classroom and get bad actors out of leadership positions without giving them a significant amount of money to go away. So what I'm going to ask you to do, will you work with AXA further as this moves forward? And I'll support your bill today. I don't know if I'll support it in the future. I think there needs to be a higher bar than just the word cause. Some type of immoral conduct, I don't know. We can't work it out here today. But I mean, you know, if someone wears a blue tie, as was mentioned, and you don't like that blue tie and you fire them, well, gee, should they be subject to the same standards as someone who's committed an illegal act? I don't think so. I think there's a large delta there. So will you commit to working them?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. As I always do in all my bills, I always reach out, work with all my stakeholders on every issue as many times as you want, as long as you want.
You're a good man, Mr. Alejo. With
Chairman,
that, I'm sorry?
Can I make a quick
Yes,
comment
go
here?
ahead.
I will be supporting your bill today, but it was my understanding before coming here and in my discussion with you yesterday, I was under the impression that your negotiation with AXA was already worked out, and my concern with your bill was the fact that this was only limited to superintendent, and I believe in your discussion with AXA, you were discussing the amendment that will apply the same limit to all certified and non-certified employees, and I'm hearing that that's not the case.
Well, this has to do with superintendent pay, and this is, and you're accurate, this is language that we worked out that they told us with these changes they could live with this bill.
Right. I mean, I'm in support of the bill because, again, the school districts around the state providing school superintendents, you know, giving generous buyouts in severance packages. I know we're using taxpayer money, and we should not let the school districts divert funds away. I mean, to me, this is unacceptable. But I think I'm going to be okay for today to pass the bill. But as it moves through, as the chair and other concerns were raised from my colleagues, I hope you will be able to work this out and see if you can accept some of the concerns that were raised and address those.
Yeah. Assemblymember Kim, my commitment to you is to follow up with you and hear out some of those concerns and see how we might possibly address those.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alejo. And again, my concern is that there be a higher bar than just the word cause. And I, too, thought this had been worked out. So that was my understanding when I walked in the room today. So with that, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
We need motions.
Oh, we need a motion. Moved and seconded.
The motion is do pass. O'Donnell?
Aye.
O'Donnell, I. Chavez? Kim? Aye. Kim, I. McCarty? McCarty, I. Santiago? Thurman? Aye. Thurman, I. Weber? It has 4 votes. It's out.
The bill is out. 4 votes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members.
And Mr. Ridley Thomas is next. File item number 9, AB 1185.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, first I'd like to point out that I have accepted the suggested amendments as noted in the analysis. I'd like to present AB 1185, which would allow Los Angeles Unified School District to establish a 5-year pilot program to authorize the district to select contractors for project over $1 million based on the best combination of price and qualifications, otherwise known as the best value procurement method. I think that members of this committee are very familiar with this method. We have a couple of special guests from out of town, including Mark Halvatter, who's the Chief of Facilities over at LAUSD and is doing an admirable job, I might add, in making sure that we have first-class facilities in the Los Angeles Unified School District. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have my witnesses present.
You may.
Thank you. Mark Hovatter, Chief Facility Executive, Los Angeles Unified School District. We've had a very successful construction program over the last 15 years, and as part of that program, we've had a pre-qualification system. With this pre-qualification system, approximately 30% of the contractors who would like to do work with the district are unable to because this basically eliminates contractors that are going to have a low success of actually complying with all our specifications that we have. The pre-qualification system is very good, but with the 70% that do perform work on our projects, if we were to only have low bid as an option where we could only consider price, then we would have to assume that all of those 70% are going to perform equally. With the 18,000 projects that we've completed over the last 15 years, our experience is that those 70% don't perform equally. There are some that perform more than others. We believe that if our only option is to consider price, then you can't take into consideration things like, does a contractor have a history of finishing on time? Do they comply with all the local laws like prevailing wage and treating subcontractors and suppliers fairly? Do they have to replace materials that they've attempted to substitute in that don't meet our specifications? Do they honor their warranties? Should something become defective in the coming years, do they stand by them and honor them? And perhaps most importantly to us, because we're a school district, do they minimize the impact on our operations of our schools? We're doing construction on a campus while we're still occupying and running our schools. We recognize that the many federal agencies and the UC systems have successfully used a best value procurement method to provide better results. We strongly believe that if Los Angeles Unified School District is also able to use this demonstration project, that we will be able to deliver better products for our students and our teachers that deserve them. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Dave Ackerman representing the Associated General Contractors. We are in support of the best value method. There are now at least 2 other best value bills moving through the legislature. There are also several design build bills. Our main concern is to make sure that we have consistency of language and definitions between those bills, especially in this one dealing with what determines a safety record for a contractor. You can't have a contractor be determined safe under one method and not safe under another because of the way the language is written. We've talked to the author about making sure we have consistency among the different methodologies. We just did that last year with SB 785 with Lois Wolk with design build, and we hope that the best value, it needs to go down that same path, and we support the measure in that line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council, also pleased to support the bill.
Thank you. Any further support? Any opposition to the bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Richard Markinson here for the Western Electrical Contractors Association, the Associated Builders and Contractors of San Diego and California, the Air Conditioning Trade Association, and Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors of California. We have a narrow area of opposition. We're not opposed to best value, although we do have some concerns about some of the more subjective characteristics of best value. We do object, however, to the safety language. The language in the bill, although but has been recently modified, and we appreciate the fact that the district will have some more objective ability to consider the safety record. It incorporates language in the determination of safety that has no place in determining whether it's a safe contractor or not. It's related to workers' compensation claims appeals and does not belong in the bill. The preferred language that we've seen is over in Senator Wolk's measure in the Senate right now. This loophole needs to be closed. Also, we've seen a tendency for skilled workforce requirements that have graduated requirements for completing an apprenticeship program. Our clients are strongly in favor of apprenticeship programs and, in fact, sponsor apprenticeship throughout California. However, the new standard of 70% graduation is, I think, going to be a challenge for many contractors to face and does not take into effect that there are other ways to become a journey-level worker in California, including military service, on-the-job training. So we are concerned and have suggested, at least ABC of California has suggested, that threshold of 70% is too high, and that the contracting community may need additional time to be able to satisfy those requirements. We are opposed unless amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further opposition? Seeing no opposition, any members of the committee wish to comment? We have a motion. Mr. Ridley-Thompson, you may close.
Thank you for the indulgence, Mr. Chair, and we respectfully request an aye vote.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is do pass as amended. O'Donnell?
Aye.
O'Donnell, aye. Chavez? Kim? McCarty? Aye. McCarty, aye. Santiago? Thurmond? Thurmond, aye. Weber? Weber, aye. It has 4 votes. It's out.
The bill has 4 votes. It is out.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. Daly, file item number 5, AB 715.